Today's lesson is Say Cheese, the mystery of head canting. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
Hi, I'm Kiki.
You may not notice it because we're a sound-only program here, but my head is tilting right now. It helps me see the screen better, but I guess a lot of people tilt their heads when they're being photographed, and that's what we are going to be talking about in today's lesson.
Well, Roger, what is your favorite position or pose when you take a photo?
Oh, gee, I don't really like to take photos so much, but yeah, I guess I often at times tilt my head when I am having myself photographed, or I wear something over my head because I don't want people to see my male pattern baldness and other things like that, or I try to put makeup on my face so they can't see all my warts and my zits and things like that. How about you? What sort of position do you like to assume when being photographed?
Well, I just like to give the camera a big smile like the one I'm having now. But we see that throughout the years, there are always different trends when people take photos, right? So we know one of them being say cheese when you take a photo. And now there's this thing about head canting. What is it?
Head canting, yeah. This is a word that I am not very familiar with, but it just means tilting when the top part of something moves to the side and is lower than the other side. I guess a really good example is the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy. It is leaning, or it's kind of tilting to the side. I guess you could also say it is canting. And again, people often position their heads this way when they're being photographed. Let's find out all about this. Let's begin our lesson by listening to the first part, and we'll be right back.
Say cheese, the mystery of head canting. What do you do when you have your photo taken? Do you flash your brightest smile or tilt your head to one side? If you fall into the latter group, you're not alone. Head tilting, also known as head canting, is an extremely common gesture. In fact, it's so common that one study found that nearly 3/4 of the study participants canted their heads when photographed.
All right, let's learn more about the mystery of head canting. What do you do when you have your photo taken? Do you flash your brightest smile or tilt your head to one side? So we know that when people take their photos, or when people have their photos taken, they like to do lots of different poses, or they have certain signature pose or signature things that they do. And some of the things that people do are smile or tilt their head to one side.
Right. And of course, lots of times people will say cheese when they want to smile. But to me, that seems kind of artificial. It doesn't seem very sincere because you're just kind of putting on this smile just for the camera. So when I'm photographed, I try to think of some funny things I saw in movies. Like I often think about Sheriff Bart in the movie Blazing Saddles. And whenever I think of that, it makes me genuinely smile, and I look better in photographs as a result of that. But yes, indeed, I'm not really sure if I cant my head so much. So yes, what do you do when you have your photo taken? Do you flash your brightest smile or tilt your head? And we did talk about the word tilt here, which means to lean to one side or another. And if you fall into the latter group, if you can be categorized into the latter category of people who tilt their head when they're being photographed, well, you're not alone. Lots of other people do that as well.
Head tilting, also known as head canting, is an extremely common gesture. So it's probably something that you and I both have done, but we've never really noticed it before.
True.
And maybe we just didn't know that it was called head canting. Okay. In fact, it is extremely common. It is a common gesture. It is something that is done so often, and it is the tilting of our head.
Exactly. And of course, sometimes it happens if you have some puppies and you kind of make a weird sound, they will tilt their heads to wonder what the heck that sound is. Oh, it's so cute. And I guess people do this as well. So if you want your subjects to tilt their heads, you can whistle at them or make some weird sounds, and they might cant their heads or tilt their heads as well. In fact, it's so common that one study found that nearly 3/4 of the study participants canted their heads when photographed. So a participant is somebody who takes part in something. They had a study, so they needed people to be part of this study. They participated in this study. They were participants. They took part in this study. And when they were photographed, when someone took their picture with a camera, they canted or tilted their heads. That's a pretty large percentage, 75%.
Right. So it's a lot more common than we know. In fact, we probably do it ourselves and we just never noticed it. Okay? So that comes to the end of part 1. Let's listen to part 2.
Despite head tilting being such a habitual pose, no one is entirely sure why we do it. One theory suggests it's a reaction to the awkwardness of being in front of a camera. As evidence, supporters of this idea point out that it's far more prevalent in photos than in real life. However, head canting can also be seen in centuries-old paintings, so there's clearly more to it. A second theory claims it's a sign of agreeableness. In other words, people who tilt their heads might be unconsciously signaling their friendly intentions. People favoring this explanation believe it's proved by the gesture's prevalence in images of young people and women, and its virtual absence in images of powerful figures.
大家好，第二部分我们来介绍 habitual 这个形容词，表示习惯性的、惯常的或是积习难改的。例如 Excessive drinking has become habitual for Oscar, and that made his family worry about him very much. 酗酒已成为 Oscar 的习惯，家人都很担心他。或是 George takes a habitual walk at the park every morning. George 每天早上都会例行性的去公园散步。接下来一样看到形容词 prevalent， 它的意思是盛行的、普遍的或是流行的。例如 Despite popular belief, depression is one of the most prevalent diseases in the world today. 不同于人们普遍的看法，忧郁症是当今世界最盛行的疾病之一。又或者说 Smartphones are one of the most prevalent forms of personal technology today. 智慧型手机是当今个人科技最流行的形态之一。接着是名词 intention， 它的意思是意图或是打算。例如 Nora announced her intention to run for mayor. Nora 宣布竞选市长的意图。又或者 My intention is to get through the meeting as quickly as possible. 我打算要尽快开完这个会议。再来介绍 explanation 这个单字，它是名词，指的是解释或是说明。举例来说 I listened to the teacher's explanation of the problem, but I still couldn't understand it. 我听了老师对问题的解释，但还是听不懂。也可以说 Officials could not offer an explanation for the power failure. 官员们对停电无法提供说明。接下来我们看到形容词 virtual， 指的是几乎的或是实质上的，也可以是虚拟的意思。可以说 Buying a cheap and spacious house in that country is a virtual impossibility. 要在那个国家购买便宜又宽敞的房子几乎是不可能的。又或者说 The game allows players to create a virtual world on their computer. 这款游戏让玩家在自己的电脑上创造虚拟世界。
Okay, part 2 begins by saying, despite head tilting being such a habitual pose, even though head tilting is such a habitual pose, no one is entirely sure why we do it. If something's habitual, it's something you do over and over. Like, for example, smoking can become habitual if you do it too often. And so you don't want to even start smoking. Otherwise, it will become a habit or it will become habitual. But this is a habitual pose. Lots of people do it every time someone holds up a phone to take their picture. They just do this subconsciously without thinking. It is habitual.
So people will tilt their head when they see a camera, and we're not really sure why we do it. No one is entirely sure why we do it. One theory suggests it's a reaction to the awkwardness of being in front of a camera. So what does it mean to be awkward or the awkwardness of something. It is the feeling of being uncomfortable or to do something that is not natural to that person. So not everybody is comfortable being in front of the camera. There are lots of people that don't like their photos taken, so it doesn't feel natural to them. They feel awkward, okay? So the theory suggests that it's a subconscious or a very natural reaction. The body just does it naturally. They'll tilt their head. They're not really standing up straight or putting their head straight in a very confident position. So the tilting of the head occurs, and it is to suggest that this person might be uncomfortable and maybe they're being forced to take the photo.
Yep, you don't feel confident, you feel uncomfortable. Like, for example, there can be a certain amount of awkwardness if you run into an old girlfriend who is with her current boyfriend. There can be a lot of awkwardness there. You can feel awkward or uncomfortable or unusual. And yes, indeed, being in front of a camera can be an awkward situation because we're always worried about how we look, how the picture is going to come out. So, of course, we feel awkward, we feel insecure. And as evidence, supporters of this idea, or people who support this theory, they point out that it's far more prevalent in photos than in real life. So indeed, if you look at people in regular situations, when they're eating, when they're talking to people, when they're commuting to work, they don't tilt their heads so often. But when they're in photographs, they do it more often. It's more prevalent. Here, prevalent just means common. It's something you see more often.
However, head canting can also be seen in centuries-old paintings. So there's clearly more to it. Okay, so we were talking about not being sure about what head canting is, and research has told us that it's actually more common than we know. And this goes all the way back to centuries-old paintings. So paintings from hundreds of years ago, we can already see people having their head painted in a tilted way. So there's clearly more to it. So when the phrase clearly more to it is basically suggesting that there's actually a lot we don't know about a certain topic and there's more reason behind something.
Right. So, of course, portraits were painted hundreds of years ago. And back then, of course, they did not have cameras for people to feel embarrassed in front of. So people should not have been tilting their heads, but they still were, although maybe they were feeling awkward at being painted when the artist kept looking at them over and over again. That might be a possibility. So that's one theory, because we just feel awkward in front of the camera. A second theory claims it's a sign of agreeableness. That just means you're trying to be agreeable, you're trying to be liked, you want things to go smoothly, you don't want to feel that people think that you're aggressive or dangerous or something. In other words, to put it more simply, people who tilt their heads might be unconsciously signaling their friendly intentions. So they don't really know they're doing this, it's unconscious. They're signaling or letting people know about their friendly intentions. Your intention is just what you intend or what you want to do or what you're planning to do. So you might ask somebody, well, what is your intention? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to start working? Do you want to be a stay-at-home mom or whatever? Yeah, what is your intention? What is your plan?
So basically, this second theory is claiming that when people tilt their head, it is a way for people to show that they are friendly or they are nice and they want to show that they don't have hidden agendas or things like that. So tilting of the head is a suggestion of being friendly or having good thoughts. People favoring this explanation or people that support this theory believe it's proved by the gesture's prevalence in images of young people and women and its virtual absence in images of powerful figures. So the people that support this theory, this explanation, when something is explained or described, a statement that is to make something clear, that is an explanation. So when they explain that this theory is meant to be nice when you tilt your head, it is proven because they see the images of young people and women. A lot of these images show that their heads are tilting. It's very prevalent in these images.
Prevalence is the noun form. Prevalent is the adjective. Again, it just means widespread or common. So yes, that could explain the prevalence of these images of young people who tilt their heads. And of course, we've got a virtual absence of these images in powerful figures. So Napoleon and Bill Clinton and John Major and people like that did not pose that way. It's virtually absent in such pictures. If something's virtual, it's almost 100%, but not quite.
Right. So we can see, as we talked briefly just now, about this, your body language. When you tilt your head, it's a friendlier gesture. But when you're confident, you stand straight with your head up high, and you don't see people that are strong, powerful leaders. You don't see their photos or their portraits of them tilting their head. Okay, so that comes to the end of part 2. Let's listen to part 3.
Whatever the reasons behind it, head canting is a universal human gesture that has been around for centuries, so odds are that it's here to stay.
第三部分介绍片语 The odds are 加 that 加主词再加动词，其中的 the 可以省略，它的意思是有可能点点点或是有机会点点点。例如 Odds are that you'll encounter an English speaker in every major city of the world. 在全球各大城市遇到讲英语的人机会很大。或是 Although facing many obstacles, the odds are that Jimmy will succeed in his business. 尽管面临许多障碍，但 Jimmy 很有可能事业会成功。最后一样是片语 here to stay， 意思是已被普遍接受或是已广为流行。例如Although it only started in the 1950s, rock and roll is here to stay. 虽然摇滚乐起自1950年代，但它到今天仍然广受喜爱。再看一个例子 It appears that the trend of streaming movies online is here to stay. 线上串流播放电影的趋势似乎已成气候。
Okay, here's part 3. We wrap things up in part 3. It says, whatever the reasons behind it, head canting is a universal human gesture that has been around for centuries. So in this sentence, we've got the word universal, and that could be referring to the entire universe, but probably not. It's just referring to all kinds of different situations down here on Earth. The universe, of course, is billions of light years in size. And so, of course, we don't know about what's out there, so we can't describe everything in the universe. But if you do use the word universal, we are talking about things that can be applied to all different situations that we know about here on Earth.
Apparently, we do it a lot more often than we thought, and we don't notice it every single day. And we still don't know the reasons behind it. But whatever the reason it is, for whatever reason we do it, it is a very natural occurrence. It is just something that our body will do. And we've established that this action or this gesture is meant to be a very friendly gesture. It is meant to show that they are very soft. They don't have ill intentions to do something. So overall, it is quite a positive gesture that we can do. And I think that's why it's become a popular pose nowadays. More people are doing it consciously. They're trying to tilt their head on purpose when they take photos. And this is probably something that will stay around for many, many years.
Yep, it's here to stay, which means it's permanent. It's not going away anytime soon. And while we're on the topic, of course, there are many other ways to move your head in a photograph. Tilting just means you move the top part of your head to the right and down or to the left and down. down. You could also sort of spin it on your axis to show like the left side of your face or the right side of your face. Maybe one of your eyes is kind of crooked or something, or maybe you've got a big wart on your nose that you want to hide. So, of course, you can move your head in another direction, or you can move your head in such a way where your head is pointed more toward the camera, or your chin is more pointed to the camera, and then you can have a combination of these three different movements and produce different effects that way. So the next time somebody takes your picture or the next time you take some selfies, think about that. Try to move your head in different positions.
Right. So people will try all these different positions to find the best angle or the way their face might show up in the photograph. So a lot of girls will try to explore the different angles of their face by tilting or moving their head in different directions.
Right, and remember, you could never take enough selfies of yourself. The memory on your memory cards or on the cloud is endless, so indeed you can spend 24 hours a day taking selfies. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 今天要练习克漏字题型，我们来看看文章的5个题目咯。第一题是 If you 空格 the latter group, you're not alone。 题目意思是如果你空格后面这一组你并不孤单。那这题是测验片语动词，我们看选项 A cope with 表示应付处理， B get over 它可以表达对不愉快的事情释怀，或是表达克服，像克服困难，或是表达从疾病中恢复等等。那么 C compete for 是表达为什么竞争， D fall into 是表达属于或是归类于什么什么。从语义上来看，最适合选项是 D fall into。 所以这个 fall into the latter group 就是表达属于后面那一组，属于后面那一类。好，那第二题他提到说Nearly 3/4 of the study participants canted their heads when 空格。题目意思就是说将近3/4的研究参与者在空格时会歪着头。我们先来看看选项 A photographed, B photographing, C having photographed, D were photographed。 那 photograph 当动词就是表达拍照，以上4个选项是它的不同变化形式，所以这题就是在考我们时态咯。由于空格前方它有 when 可能是用来引导副词子句或是分词构句，那从语义上来看，它原本是可以写作 when they were photographed， 在他们被拍照时。好，那接着这个部分可以简化成 when 加过去分词 pp， 也就是说我们省略 when 后面的主词 they，那动词部分是被动语态，只要保留过去分词，那就变成 when photographed， 就是表达在被拍照时。所以这题答案就选 A photographed。 好，再来看到第3题是空格 head tilting being such a habitual pose, no one is entirely sure why we do it。 题目意思是空格歪头是一种习惯性姿势，没有人完全确定我们为什么这么做。那空格后方是名词片语 head tilting being such a habitual pose。 我们这边可以判断空格里面要填入介系词，那选项 A concerning 当介系词表示关于B besides 它当介系词表示除了什么什么之外， C despite它是介系词表示尽管，那么 D although 它是连接词表示虽然尽管，那连接词后面要接子句，所以这个选项就不考虑咯。好，那看到前面3个选项都是介系词，可是从语义上来看应该是要表达说尽管歪头是一种习惯性姿势，但没有人完全确定我们为什么这么做，这边最适合选项是 C despite。 第4题他提到 One theory suggests it's a 空格 the awkwardness of being in front of a camera。 题目意思是一种理论认为这是对在镜头前尴尬不安的空格。这题考我们单字用法，选项 A sensitivity to 是表达对什么什么敏感的，易受什么影响的， B reaction to 是表达对什么的反应， C reliance on 是表达对什么依赖的， D reflection on 是表达对什么深思反省。那根据课文它应该是要表达 对在相机前尴尬不安的反应，这边最适合语义的选项就是 be reaction to。 好，我们看到第5题，他说 People favoring this explanation believe it's proved by the gesture's prevalence in images of young people and women, and its virtual 空格 in images of powerful figures。 题目意思是支持这种解释的人认为，这点可由这个姿势在年轻人和女性的画像中普遍存在，而在有权有势者的画像中几乎空格来获得证明。好， virtual 在这边是形容几乎的，那这边是在考我们字汇。来看选项 A recognition， 它表示认出、识别、承认、认可。 B preference 表示偏爱、偏袒。 C observation 表示观察、观测。 D absence 表示不存在或是缺乏，当这个意思解释时是单数。那 absence 还有缺席的意思。从语义上来看，它应该是要表达这个姿势在年轻人和女性画像中普遍存在，而在有权有势的人他的画像中是几乎不存在的。这边最适合语义的选项是 D absence。 好啦，那以上是今天的讲解，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Participant. All of our workshop participants were given a notebook and pen. Habitual. It's hard to stop smoking once it has become habitual. Prevalent. The prevalent use of smartphones among students impacts both learning and social interactions in various ways. Intention. In spite of his good intentions, Ron's attempt to help only made things worse. Explanation. Max had no explanation for why he didn't show up to class. Virtual. His cooking skills have reached a virtual expert level after years of practice and learning. Universal. Her first novel received universal praise.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Kiki.
I am Roger.
See you next time.